Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seat belts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, in the immediate aftermath of that dastardly cowardly terrorist attack by a Black Lives Matters affiliate in Dallas, Texas the other day, we see that the commander-in-chief, Barack Hussein Obama, the leader of these disastrous last two terms of his regime, has decided to walk both sides of the line after stoking the flames of racial animus and division in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and community of popular sovereigns of ours. The president has decided to show up in Dallas, Texas, uninvited. This after it was his insightful language that brought about this violence. It was his encouragement of these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist organizations that have no love for the United States of America that brought about this turn of events. It really is quite staggering and shocking to see that he would make such a move. However, it's not unpredictable. Everything that he has done has been about tearing this country apart. That is why so many have gone out on a limb and called him the great divider-in-chief. That's what he has been doing. And again, it goes down into the lines of exactly who he is. In his heart of hearts and deep within his soul, Barack Hussein Obama has always been a frothing-at-the-mouth Fabian socialist leftist who is dedicated to the complete and utter annihilation of the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people. And the sooner that we come to this realization and accept it, the sooner we'll be able to combat this and to rebut his ridiculous attempts to basically fan the flames of animus. When you look at the very root of what the so-called Black Lives Matter organization is all about, you see that it's about non-inclusiveness. They are essentially saying that only black lives matter. And a lot of their acolytes on the left say, no, clearly we're misreading this, that all human life is important. Of course, there is a lot of duplicity and intellectual disingenuousness in such statements. If all lives mattered, then would they not be opposed to carte blanche access to abortion? No, of course not. Again, it goes down to that thing that we've warned you about ever since we first took off over the friendly airwaves dating back to September 11th of 2015 with our premiere episode. It's that these frothing-at-the-mouth Fabian socialist leftists play this dark and twisted game of semantics, that they try and pervert the traditional meanings of words to make them fit a particular narrative and agenda that they wish to foist upon the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. Of course, they want to strip us of all of our power, and they want to play this dark and twisted game of semantics in order to fundamentally and irreparably transform or alter the United States of America away from a constitutionally endowed representative republic into this dark and twisted Fabian socialist dystopia that they have been working so meticulously towards creating for the past century and a half now. Folks, this is the danger that we face in modern America, and it shows no signs of improving at any time in the foreseeable future. This is why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, come to these programs and speak into our microphones to warn you of the direct and stark danger that the Fabian socialists represent. Their ideology is not about you. It's not about you doing well. It's not about empowering you. Yet, that's the great lie that they've managed to accomplish with their allies in the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. They've made us think that they are this benign group, that their philosophies are well rooted in the American way of life. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. We here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have exposed their lies time after time. And we will never back away from that mission. We will never turn our backs on the true goal that we've had here since our first episode, which is empowering you, the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, by giving you the tools necessary to foster a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution, and thereby your fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. That is something that far too few people are doing. We have even suggested the creation of the constitutional compositionist movement in order to rebut the twisted efforts of these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. I know that I've said that, and it almost sounds like I'm a scratched record just repeating one refrain over and over again. But bear with me, folks. There is method to my madness here. Basically, what Barack Hussein Obama is doing by making this uninvited visit to Dallas, Texas, is he is besmirching the memory of those who donned the uniforms of their various police departments in order to protect and serve the community of Dallas, Texas. He has always had a deep-seated hatred for the state of Texas because in election cycle after election cycle, Texas has been a stalwart of conservative-minded thinking. And that, of course, is diametrically opposed to everything that he stands for and represents. There's deeper meaning behind all of this, too. It's like how Madam Clinton appeared after the murder of those Benghazi, basically your State Department personnel and the first ambassador to be killed in the service of the United States since 1979, to say that it was a video, an anti-Islamic video that caused a protest, which then led to the outbreak of violence. Again, a lie. They knew for a fact at that time that it was not the case. And of course, it was just her doubling down on the twisted Fabian socialist narrative. It shows that these intellectually disingenuous souls will do anything to further progress their twisted machinations and philosophy and ideology, irrespective of what might come, irrespective of the deleterious and detrimental impact that it might have on the republic at large. That is the truth. And of course, it is playing out like some poorly scripted soap opera. You know, 2016 was supposed to be the election cycle that we would put an end to this sort of madness once and for all. It was the election cycle for us to lose. And what I mean by that is we had all of our ducks in a row, and we were prepared to put a true principled constitutionalist in the Oval Office. And then, all of a sudden, the bizarre ascendancy of the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around vulgarian Donald J. Trump, also known as John Barron and also known as John Miller, came onto the scene. The mafioso quafioso came forth and spewed his ignorance. Yet, because he was able to essentially just tap into a strain of anger, he became what I refer to as the Pied Piper of disillusioned conservatives. Movement conservatives have been frustrated in their efforts to make any headway on the national stage. This is because of the détente wing of the gutless opposition party, or GOP. We have said that they have gone out of their way to ignore the will of the true base of the party. And that, of course, allowed a charlatan, a fraud, a huckster, a con artist, and a snake oil salesman, the likes of Donald J. Trump, to waltz in and proclaim that he was the firebrand anti-establishment candidate. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. When you look at his own history, he has a long, well-established track record of funding and propping up the worst offenders of the frothing-at-the-mouth Fabian socialist leftists who are hell-bent on the complete and utter annihilation of the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people. So we have been trying to warn of his duplicity since the start. Unfortunately, the Lion Trumpidians didn't want to heed our warnings. They told us that we were idiots, and then they moved about to try and make basic death threats towards us and all sorts of other vile and vulgar things, much in the cast and mold and model of their fearless leader, the mafioso, quafioso, quaff-waffler himself. But we see that he has been oddly quiet on this issue. Sure, he comes out and says that he supports the police, but then when he tried to have a photo op moment with his own native area's police department, that is, the NYPD, they refused, saying that they did not want to politicize the issue. To the credit of the NYPD, they also said that they would not provide a photo op to the former senator of the state of New York, Hillary Rotten Clinton. But the very fact that Trump would even try and pull an Obama-like situation there with a photo op is disingenuous. It should turn the stomach of every decent, hard-working, red-blooded American citizen. Because what we see with respect to Obama making this uninvited trip to my home state of Texas in the immediate aftermath of this wanton act of domestic left-wing terrorism just shows that he is about creating a false narrative, a false perception. And Donald J. Trump has been the master of false perceptions and the art of deception throughout this 2016 presidential election cycle. We also see that in St. Louis, Missouri, there has been another racially motivated Black Lives Matters inspired shooting of a police officer. Now, of course, the Department of Justice Department, has come out under the tutelage of Loretta Lynch and said that this is all due in no small part to the readily and easily available access to firearms here in the United States. You see, again, they're trying to twist the narrative to fit that of their dark and twisted machinations, trying to blame the fundamental and inalienable God-given rights of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, for these unspeakable atrocities and horrors. Yet they go out and they continue to stoke the flames of racial animus and division. This divisive nature of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists is nothing new. As we have so oft times reiterated on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, the Fabian socialists have wedded themselves to the tried and true, albeit threadbare, tactic and strategy of divide and conquer. They see this as a way to make the body politique of the United States anemic. They seek to bleed us dry in a series of over 1,000 cuts in which they can then move forward with their true ultimate goal of fundamentally and irreparably transforming the United States of America from that of a constitutionally endowed representative republic to one of a twisted, dark, foreboding, Fabian socialist nightmare. What we have to do, folks, to really combat this is to come to the realization that it is on us. The onus is on us. The duty, obligation, and above all responsibility falls squarely on our shoulders and on our shoulders alone. We must stand together, shoulder to shoulder, in solidarity and unity, and say that we will not allow them to hijack this tragedy, to try and twist it to their own machinations, because what they are trying to do is once again destroy the real narrative there. They want to obfuscate the truth so that their twisted agenda remains blameless. Yet we know for a fact, in no uncertain terms, that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists that have engaged in this insightful, hateful diatribe have inspired the sort of hatred. Micah Xavier Jones, that twisted individual that carried out the slaughter of 5 Dallas area police officers in cold blood for the simple sin of being born white and having the willingness to don the uniforms of their respective departments to protect and serve the community of Dallas, said that he was very angry because of the shooting in Baton Rouge of that Phyllis character. I forget his last name just off the top of my head, but he was saying that there is this pattern, this undeniable pattern of race baiting within the police department, and that they have special treatment for people of certain races, and therefore they must be punished. It was vengeance, clear as day, but it was politically motivated by the same sort of reckless rhetoric and diatribe that has been uttered in front of the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media by President Peel and Squeal Barack Hussein Obama himself. I know that I mentioned it on yesterday's program and on various other previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, but it bears repeating here again. It goes back to the time that Barack Hussein Obama stood in front of the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and said that the Boston police acted stupidly when they arrested a professor who was attempting to break into his own house. This after his neighbors had called and reported in an attempt to protect his own property. What rational person actually attempts to break into their own home? If they've locked themselves out, why don't they call for a locksmith? Why don't they go through the proper channels and avenues? Why don't they go and tell their neighbors what's happening before they go in and break into the house? It doesn't matter what the race of the neighbors are or what the race of the homeowner is. It speaks to common sense that in a community in which we care about each other's private, individual, personal property and real property, that we would attempt to protect them from any type of twisted or mysterious happenings. That only goes to common sense. A reasonable person would do that, would call the police when they feel that the property is threatened and when they feel that their own property is threatened. It's also like the narrative that was put forth during the whole George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin incident. Recall that Obama went in front of the cameras of the salivating mainstream media to proclaim that if he had a son, he would look like Trayvon. That sort of politicization of these issues is highly unwelcome. It's highly inflammatory, and it was designed just to be prejudicial and to fan the flames of racial animus, division, divisiveness. All of these things fall into place, and it is all part of the grand scheme of things with respect to these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. Then we see that in the aftermath of the horrific shooting that occurred last summer at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists went to the greatest extent that they could to try and blame an inanimate object. They tried to blame the Confederate flag. This was an attempt to blame the Southern Battle Cross, the battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia, for causing the violence. Well then, should they not apply that same logic and reasoning to the Black Lives Matters organizations and the Black Political Power organization that took credit for this dastardly deed that unfurled in Dallas just a couple of evenings ago? Of course, if they were intellectually genuine, that is what they would do. But they are not intellectually genuine. They are intellectually disingenuous, and that's why it matters. That's why he shouldn't come to Texas. The whole reason that he's doing this is to score political points, and we cannot tolerate it. We cannot tolerate what he is trying to do, this twisted message that he is trying to force down our throats, and to dishonor the brave officers who were killed in cold blood just for being who they were. That tells me all I need to know about him. When he had been out there spreading all of the animus, making this a case to try and stoke the flames of racial animus, division, and divisiveness, he was encouraging this sort of incitement of violence. Recall that one of the slogans of the Black Lives Matters organization was something they chanted time and again, particularly in the immediate aftermath of the Ferguson, Missouri incident. What do we want? Dead cops. And when do we want them? Now. That is what they believe. That is what they are trying to march towards. And that is the problem, because it shows that he is trying to literally unravel the societal fabric and framework of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. We cannot allow that to come to fruition because it presents a major threat to the sanctity and unity of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and community of popular sovereigns of ours. Of course, that has been the goal of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists and their allies in the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media for the last century and a half now. Folks, this is why we have warned about this time and again on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. It's because these twisted souls do not have our best interests at heart. They are doing everything they can to destroy us. And we see that they have been working the violence up incrementally, just as they have been trying to force their twisted Fabian socialist machinations down our throat as the new norm in incremental fashion. Remember that that's what the Fabian socialists are all about. They trace their origins back to 19th century Great Britain, in which they adopted the original iconography of that of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Well, as long as we know that there are wolves trying to infiltrate us by acting as though they are a part of polite society, we can then begin to sniff them out. We can do our job as a shepherd's dog, a sheep herder's dog, to protect the flock. And if the flock is the American people, it's also time that the American people become rams, not just sheep. It's time that we become proactive in the maintenance and safeguarding of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Because we already know that this administration, which can't even really be called an administration, it's more akin to a banana republic regime, has tried to spin the narrative in such a direction that it was blaming our fundamental and inalienable God-given right to keep and bear firearms as is guaranteed and protected by the clear and concise language of the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution for these wanton acts of violence. And of course we know that the Department of Homeland Security's Secretary J. Johnson, had agreed with Salazar, the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist mayor of the capital of Texas, Austin, Texas, had come out and said that domestic terrorism in the guise of radical extremist right-wingers posed just as significant a threat as that of Islamo-fascist terrorists. Yet we see that the facts on the ground show nothing could be further from the truth. What was carried out in Dallas is in no question an act of wanton violence and terrorism. But it was left-wing terrorism. It was left-wing terrorism encouraged by these forces of despotism, tyranny, oppression, and division. The frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, who have dedicated their entire political movement and existence to the complete and utter annihilation of the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people. Folks, this is why I come to this microphone, to warn you of the significant dangers that are facing us, to make you realize that it is the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists that pose the most significant threat to our God-given rights. It is time that we come together in solidarity and unity and basically stand up to these people, to let them know that this country is not theirs, that the Constitution does not belong to the government, it does not belong to the mafioso quafioso, and it damn sure doesn't belong to President Barack Hussein Obama himself. The reason they have dedicated themselves to the destruction of the Constitution is to weaken us. The goal is to tear us apart and to weaken all of the United States, to fundamentally transform us. Remember that Obama even said that when he was going on to a 5-minute approach to fundamentally transforming the United States. What it shows is that they are masterful at trying to manipulate the true narrative, to try and obfuscate the truth and to rewrite the truth to fit their own twisted agenda. Folks, that is a lie. There is no other way to describe that other than as an unadulterated lie, because it's the adulterated truth. That's the game they play. That is what they want to have happen here. And by going to Dallas in the way that he is, insulting the families of those fallen officers after having given such praise to the Black Lives Matters organization, Obama is purposely trying to pour salt into the wound. That is what he is attempting to achieve. And what good is that going to do? Particularly when they found this rambling notebook in Xavier Jones' house. They found bomb-making equipment, and they found all of this rambling nonsense, a rambling manifesto contained in a journal that he had made, clearly demonstrating that he was planning a much larger scale attack on law enforcement officials and officers than he was actually able to carry out in Dallas just a few evenings ago. That is the same type of thing that we see with the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists and their allies in the Islamo-fascists. And it comes down to a division to worldviews. Conservatives view the world as it really is, with the entire idea of self-accountability, self-responsibility being the preeminent concerns, the preeminent dominating features of an open and honest society. Self-accountability, self-responsibility leads to self-determination. The frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists loathe and despise the idea of the people being able to think and choose for themselves, because by being able to think and choose for themselves, they are able to wholeheartedly reject the twisted agenda that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists are trying to cram down our throats against our will. But remember that one of the natural law tenets that underpins our shared United States Constitution, and indeed our representative Republican form of government, is that of being able to have consent of the government. The only way that the government can be proper is if it is running with the consent of the governed. That's something that traces its origins back to the field of Runnymede in 1215 in England, when the baronage of England challenged King John I of Robin Hood fame to sign that document, saying that he could not raise taxes without their consent, that he could not go on to some sort of military campaign without their consent. That was the start of it. Our founding fathers were the ones who perfected it, who made it the great, lasting, natural law that continues to impact us to this very day. It's why my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, and I have so oft-times reiterated on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that based on the natural law tenets, because our Constitution is based on said natural law tenets, it's just as applicable today as it was 235 years ago at its inception, and, God willing, just as applicable as it will be 235 years from now. That is what we must be committed to. That is why we have pushed for the establishment of the constitutional compositionist movement. We have to stand in solidarity and unity, shoulder to shoulder, to overcome any hurdle, obstacle, and adversity that these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have thrown in our path. I know that this is not an easy task that we are called upon to do. Nevertheless, we must do it if we are to ensure the continuing vitality and viability of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. It is no easy task, but it is a task that only we can do, that only we have been tasked to do, that only we are capable of doing. And that is what we are here for, to empower you, our cherished listening audience and passengers, so that you can come together with that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of not only our shared United States Constitution, but also your fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Because by embracing that, you then empower yourself to stand up to these frauds that are attempting to ensnare you and enslave you to governmental tyranny and bondage, and say the most powerful two-letter word one-syllable word even in the English language that is almost universally understood. No. No, you cannot fundamentally transform my republic. No, you cannot trample upon my Constitution. No, you cannot steal my fundamental and inalienable rights without due process under the law. Of course, we know that they are opposed to that. Just look at the way that Joe Munchkin and Chris Murphy, those two Democrats that first tried to filibuster our fundamental and inalienable right to keep and bear firearms, saying that due process was killing us. There you have it, folks. That is proof positive that they are attempting to strip and deprive us of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Another area that I want to cover with respect to this ongoing topic that's just swirling around the once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours is something that former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich made, a statement that he had made just a few days ago, in which he tried to say that a typical white American simply could not relate to what it's like to be black in America, to understand the type of continuing and ongoing oppression that they face on a daily basis. That's highly intellectually disingenuous on his part, and of course he went on to say that it took him forever to learn how that was, and to learn that that was the case. However, what he's really saying is that he is a snob and an elitist that has no connection with the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. That's the problem with people like Newt Gingrich, and I think that also explains why he decided to throw his lot in with the mafioso quafioso, the New York vulgarian Donald J. Trump, also known as John Miller and also known as John Barron. So we see that he wants to chastise the American people, and he uses this as an opportunity to try and pander to the radical, frothing at the mouth, Fabian socialist left-wingers who want nothing more than the complete and utter annihilation of the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people. This is the sort of duplicity that we've attempted to warn you about on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. We see that this sort of intellectual disingenuousness has become par for the course with respect to those who are of the big government style mentality. And make no mistake about it, folks, Newt Gingrich falls squarely into that category. And it's disgusting. The reason that I say it's disgusting is because when you take a look at what it is that Gingrich is trying to accomplish here, it's all about his own self-aggrandizement. That's the same complaint that my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, and I have with respect to Donald Trump. It's that Donald Trump has a well-proven track record for the vast majority of his 70 years spent on God's green earth of only looking out for the interests of Donald Trump himself. It's not about the American people, and he's demonstrated that by going out and answering questions on Megwin Kelly's show over there at the Fox News Network, saying that if he lost, it would be a colossal waste of time and money. Nowhere did he make a mention about how it would be bad for the people, how his entire effort was in the interests of the American people. That right there reflects the true caliber of his soul, the true extent of his character and who he is and what he stands for and represents. And as we see, there can be no doubt that it's not about us. And we see that this entire Black Lives Matters organization and everything that that movement claims to support and to be a part of is not about the plight of black Americans. It's about their own political movement. It's about their own political wishes. It's about their own machinations. And that, too, is troubling because it has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. And part of the reason why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, come to the microphones as we do is to alert you to these dangers. But on top of that, we take it a step further, finding that proverbial, practicable, real-world solution that will not only empower you to gain and to foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution and thereby your fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, but also to give you the ability to combat this sort of chicanery. The fact of the matter is, when they try and say that a white American can't understand the plight of a black American, and neither one of them can understand the plight of the Latino Americans, and so on and so forth. What you see right there is classic divide and conquer. That's the attempt of using the rather benign-sounding identity politics to drive a wedge between the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and community of popular sovereigns of ours. It's so that they can weaken us, so that they pit American citizen against American citizen, with the end goal being of illicitly amassing power for themselves being the political elites, those who currently wield the reins of political power in the United States, at our great expense. You see, it's always at our expense. Everything that they do is about being at the expense of the American people. That's what's truly disingenuous about the entire political movement on the left, and certainly with the detente members of the gutless opposition party, or GOP. It's time that we come together, standing shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity, to reject these attempts to redefine us, to go after those that would go along with this false narrative in an attempt to punish the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that is to admit that this problem exists, to admit that this problem is there, clear as day, for anyone who is looking at this in any form of an objective fashion to see. Because what these forces are out to do is to harm us. They are acting in a way that is detrimental to the best interests of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. They are attempting to lash on to false narratives, to create a false perception, to thereby make Americans clamor to cede their own rights. Now, why would they do this? Well, again, it's all about power, corruption, and greed. These people have always been about power, corruption, and greed, and they are going to work towards that goal incessantly. This is what the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have been working towards so meticulously for the past century and a half now. It's not about us. It's not about our best interests. It's not about helping the American people succeed or to put this country back onto the path to prosperity. It's as my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, mentioned on last night's program, that what really is great about the American people, what makes America great, is this idea that we, the people, are the true ultimate. So when Trump goes along reiterating this shallow, hollow, empty, and meaningless platitude of "make America great again," he is rather intellectually in an intellectual disingenuous fashion saying that the American sovereigns have stopped being great. Well, who the hell is he to make such a proclamation? Who the hell is he to make such a statement? I don't remember giving him the power or the authority to speak on my behalf, and that's why I can't vote for him. I cannot give or lend my support for anyone who would trample the Constitution. That means Donaldoff Julius Caesar Trumpolini just as much as it means Hillary Rotten Clinton. Neither one of those two represent what I believe is necessary and in the best interest for this nation and her people. That is a rather powerful statement, I know, and it's one that you're not going to hear purveyed by the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, because it is intrinsically against the propagandistic Fabian socialist agenda that they have been working towards ever since William Randolph Hearst created yellow journalism back towards the close of the 19th century. He was the one that first started this whole agenda of trying to mask the statements and actions of the press as being done in sheer objectivity. Before that, they had always proclaimed what their bias was before they even began their pamphlets or their papers. Well, that's not the case with William Randolph Hearst, and that's not the case with the current graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. They are the ones that have spread this tale of lies and deceit and of pushing this frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist agenda. And they have been working towards this for over a century. And the gloves are starting to come off. The gloves are starting to show that the media has been a pillar of left-wing progressive antics for time immemorial. And this is a danger that is facing the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. The only way that we are going to be able to overcome this is to start reading between the lines, to start digging for the information ourselves. That is one area in which we are fortunate to live in the time period that we do. Because in this modern era, the information age, we have information readily available at our fingertips at any given moment. It is more powerful than it has ever been. It means that we can clearly find what it is that these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists are attempting to do to us. We can find out what it is that they are saying, and then we can look for the truth ourselves. That is such a powerful message. That is a message that they don't want you to understand. And again, that explains why Barack Hussein Obama has gone forth to try and have the FCC control the internet. They essentially want to create this so-called fairness, this fairness doctrine that will force a certain type of ideology, a certain type of philosophy, or a certain type of expression to have to meet government regulation. Isn't it funny that government always regulates in such a way as to be tantamount to censorship? If they had their way with the fairness doctrine, then we wouldn't be able to find out the truth about those people who are stoking the flames. We wouldn't be able to find out that David Brown, the chief of police in Dallas, had lost his own son to police fire. Here's a black man who had lost his son in a police shootout, with tests showing that his son had been high on PCP, yet he never turned his back on his duties, his obligations, and his responsibilities. He never wrongfully blamed the police. That is a man to be applauded. That is a role model for America, because that represents everything that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and community of popular sovereigns of ours. This idea of taking self-accountability and self-responsibility and being accountable for one's own actions and deeds. I applaud that. That is something that we are lacking far too much now in modern America. And it's because these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have been pinda, in which they do not want people to be held accountable, at least certainly not for their pet, insular, and discreet minorities. But if we look at the Constitution, there are two bedrock principles that are contained within the clear and concise language that we find in the four corners of that sacred document that go against this twisted machination that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists are attempting to foist upon we the people. And that is first and foremost due process. As I mentioned in the previous segment, we see that two frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist Democrat senators, Connecticut Democrat Chris Murphy and Joe Munchkin out of West Virginia. They came out and they said that what's killing us is the fundamental and inalienable God-given right of access under the law to the American people. Now, why is that such an intellectually disingenuous position for these two socialists? I'm almost tempted to call them fascists, to come out and say what they did. Why is that so dangerous? Why am I making such a big deal out of that? Well, remember that under the Constitution and under the auspices of the natural law tenets that underpin not only our shared United States Constitution, but also our representative Republican form of government, due process means providing people with notice and a hearing before their rights can be taken away, can be abridged, can be belittled, or even their freedom be taken away. That is a quintessential part of American jurisprudence. But not just American jurisprudence, that is one of the things that clearly helps identify just who we are, both as a nation and as a people. They want to take that away. The other aspect of the Constitution, which clearly stands in staunch opposition and is diametrically opposed to this propaganda that is being foisted upon us by the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, is that notion of equal protection under the law. We are all treated equally under the law. That is the way it's supposed to work, and it is our duty and obligation, and above all, our responsibility in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty here in America to proactively maintain and safeguard that aspect of our system. That's why when you look at the preamble to the United States Constitution, you find that the opening lines to the Constitution are, "We the people do ordain and establish this federal republic," basically, to create a more perfect union. That speaks volumes. It shows that our entire federalist, representative, Republican form of government is based on power that was essentially delegated to the federal government by the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. That's something that Newt Gingrich doesn't understand when he tries to go out there and say that average, ordinary, white Americans simply cannot understand the plight of black Americans, nor can we fully understand the oppression that they are going through. Why is it that they think that empathy cannot exist? Why is it that they want to continue to create these false barriers between American citizens? There is only one citizenship here. There is only one thing that draws us together and unites us, and that is the United States Constitution. One would think that a former Speaker of the House, who had come in under the so-called basic contract with America, would understand that the greatest social contract that has ever been devised by the hands of men, yet divinely inspired by providence above, is none other than our shared United States Constitution. But Newt Gingrich is a big government type. He never really believed in the message that was being preached at that time, nor does he believe in the sacrosanct nature of the popular sovereignty enjoyed by we the people. In other words, what he's doing is he wants to distance the government not only from the Constitution, but from the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty, we the people. It's an intellectually disingenuous position that he takes, and it's an unwelcome position that he takes because it works against us. And it just goes to show that, as I said from the outset of this segment, that he's really just in it for himself. And that's the truth with respect to any frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist or detente member of the gutless opposition party or GOP. And now that we see that that is fully out in the open, it's time that we come together and address it. It's time that we hold these various twisted individuals accountable for their words, deeds, and actions. Now, I'm sure some of you are probably sitting back wondering, well, Randy, just how exactly do we accomplish that? Well, I'll provide an answer for you. You start asking them about the Constitution, and when they try to deviate away from it, you hold their feet to the fire. You see, the Constitution is the key. It is the key to unlocking the chains and shackles of governmental tyranny, bondage, and servitude that has been plaguing the popular sovereigns for far too long now. And the only way that we can have the Constitution act as it was originally intended, and to safeguard us, is in our capacity as popular sovereigns to stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity and have these heart-to-heart conversations to ensure that we are proactively maintaining and safeguarding our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. No one else can do that. No one else is endowed with the authority from on high to act in such a way. These duties, obligations, and responsibilities are non-delegable, they're non-negotiable, and they are quintessentially, by their nature, ours. And that is the reality. The reality that far too many Americans cannot just figure out. It's because they have been told that they don't know what they're doing. It's because they have been educated by the historical revisionists who are doing everything in their power to change the way that the American people view themselves and try and understand the world around them. It's all based on their twisted machinations. But their twisted machinations are not in our best interests, and they never have been. And the reason for that is because they don't trust the American people. And they loathe and despise the American people because the American people have wholeheartedly rejected them time and again. And the reason for that is because we believe in self-accountability. We believe in self-determination because that is what it means to truly be an American citizen. Now, I know that the path that we are on right here and right now as I speak into this microphone is not an easy path for the American people to be on. It's as the great visionary Zygmunt Dobbs warned in his magnus opus of Keynes at Harvard some 60 years ago about the way that the Fabian socialists were infiltrating our institutions of education from coast to coast and to border. And the only way that we can fully overcome that is to be proactive and to really come together as popular sovereigns. And it comes down to our ability to act and think for ourselves. And the reason that we have to think and act for ourselves is because we are the only ones who will be able to look at this in our best interests. No one else is going to do that for us. No one else can. And that's exactly what our founding fathers understood. That's part of what the natural order of things is all about. It's about allowing us to have government start with the true fundamental building block of society, that being the nuclear family, and then creating government from there. And the further away that government gets from the people, the more limited that it's supposed to come, or become, rather, in its scope and application. And that must come to an end. And the reason I say that is that what they are trying to do is erase that. For them, in their mind, it must come to an end, because they will be rejected each and every time, and they cannot stand rejection. That's the one thing that they really cannot truly stand. And they know that deep down, it's because no one within the marketplace of ideas, within the free market and exchange of political ideologies and philosophies, would their approach to having everything be based on a lie be accepted. Think back to what Aristotle said in his Art of Rhetoric. He said that people more easily accept the truth, and that a rhetorician has a much easier job in conveying the truth. But the problem with Fabian socialism, or indeed any left-wing philosophy or ideology, is that it's based on a lie. It's based on the lie that everyone is out to oppress everyone else, that there is no way for people to proactively think for themselves, to act in their own best interests, without encroaching upon the interests of another. That's where the natural law comes in. And this is why they loathe and despise the natural law. It's why Karl Marx called religion the opiate of the masses. It's because deep down he knew that it spoke out against the twisted game that he was trying to foist upon the people. Communism is unnatural. By its nature, it's unnatural. It does not fall in line with the territorial inclinations of humanity in their animalistic nature. And the reason that it's that way is because it's about power, control, and corruption, greed. There can be no doubt in my mind that Karl Marx was an exceedingly greedy man, and he was not working in the interests of people. He was trying to become a philosopher king in his own right, to be able to tell people how to act, how to think, and how to engage in their daily lives. That's such a dangerous proposition, such an unwelcome, alien, and foreign proposition, particularly to the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. And it calls on us to be aware of that. It calls upon us to stand up for our rights and for the rights of our fellow citizens. And we have to do that because, again, no one else can. No one else has the capacity to do so. And the only way we can overcome this is to go back to strict adherence to the fundamental tenets that are contained within the four corners of the Constitution at all levels of government. You see, it's when we divorce ourselves and distance ourselves from the Constitution that we start to encounter the sorts of problems that we are because we disregard it. We can't continue like that. That is the path to ruination if we ignore it. And that's why they want to indoctrinate the up-and-coming generations, and indeed those generations which have yet to be born, from being able to think for themselves, from being able to accept this as a fundamental tenet of who they are and what they stand for and what they represent. And of course, I know, with the way that they are overzealously controlling us, the way that they use overzealous regulations to make it all the more difficult to carve out a niche or a living for ourselves and thereby be able to maintain our current standard of living and quality of life, that was all by design. And you can see that it's all part of their grand scheme to fundamentally and irreparably transform the United States of America from that of a constitutionally endowed representative Republican form of government to some sort of godless Fabian socialist dystopia. And unless and until we start to think of it in those terms and start to address the problems as they arise before us, then we will never be able to hurdle these obstacles, these adversities, these obstructions that the Fabian socialists keep trying to put in for us, to try and stop us. And they do that because, again, power, corruption, and greed. It brings to mind that old adage that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's what they're pushing for. They love, they just adore the rampant corruption that is currently afflicting this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, while it makes true, decent, hard-working, red-blooded American citizens sick to their stomach, because they see that what these people are trying to do is to work in an open and obvious fashion of oppressing them, of keeping them down, of denying them of their fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Well, that cannot be allowed to come to fruition. It cannot be allowed to continue unfettered and unabated as it has been for at least a half-century. But I'm going to argue that it goes back 150 years, because that's how long these frothing-at-the-mouth Fabian socialist leftists have been working towards undermining the sanctity of the United States of America and the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. Through incrementalization, they can try to enslave us into this twisted thing. And the way they do that is by rewriting our history, by controlling the information media sources and outlets, and trying to obfuscate the truth by dominating the narrative. And when they do that, they try to pull the political wool over your eyes so that you are downtrodden, so that you are depressed, so that you don't realize that what they are doing is not in your best interest and that it has never been in your best interest. And so we have to be vigilant. We have to be proactive. That's what our founding fathers would call upon us to do, and that is what we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, are calling upon the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty to do. That is the only way that the United States of America can ever be restored to the path to prosperity. And it requires that we be vigilant, and it requires that we hold all of these charlatans, people like Newt Gingrich, accountable for their words, actions, and deeds. And in this information age, that's what we can do. But it means holding ourselves accountable as well. And I know that that's no easy task, that is no wonderful task either. But think about how it frees you. Think of how empowering it really is to fully understand that that is at your disposal. And no one can take that from you unless you allow them to. That is the message we need to take to heart. No one can strip and deprive us of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights unless we allow them to. If you needed any proof that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media had been behind this rather divisive narrative that is taking the nation by storm, all you have to do is look at a recent interview that Jake Tapper over there at CNN had with Chief Brown of the Dallas Police Department. During the course of this interview, Tapper questioned the chief's decision to kill the Micah Xavier Jones creature who was attempting to carry out his twisted and racist machinations. Again, which once again showing that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media were attempting to stoke the flames of racial animus, divisiveness, and division in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and community of popular sovereigns of ours. And it shows that they are all about themselves. It's all about self-aggrandizement. That is the goal that they have been working towards now for such a long period of time now, folks. Again, it goes back to the idea of yellow journalism, which was created by William Randolph Hearst towards the turn of the 20th century. But it actually occurred before the turn of the 20th century. What we see here is that these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists will do anything to push forth their agenda. Come hell or high water, it just does not matter. They are dedicated with zeal to this agenda that has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. And now that we understand that, and the way that we come to dealing with that is to confront them, to use the tools that are at our disposal, and that are available to us to basically question their agenda, to put their agenda on the back burner, to bring an end to it, because their agenda is not within our best interests, and that they have never really been acting in our best interests. And unless and until we start to come to terms with that, we are going to continue to witness the ever-accelerated division and strife and violence that they are hoping to achieve in the body politique of the United States. And we can see that this is further expanded upon by people like Beyonce, or Bounce, or however she wants to say her name, Beyonce. They want to have blacks rise up against the police, to go out and kill the police. Yet these are the first individuals who ever find themselves in a situation where their lives might be in danger that call upon the police. Then something that my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, mentioned on last night's program, and it bears true. It bears true with everything that we see with these people, that they are cowardly hypocrites. That's what it comes down to, folks. This is the sort of intellectually disingenuous movement that we are having to deal with in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. And it shows no signs of improving at any time within the foreseeable future. Therefore, it falls squarely on our shoulders to put an end to it. And we do that by looking to the Constitution. We do that by being the virtuous republic that our founding fathers had always called on us to be. Now, I know that that's not easy, and that it's not a light or soft option that I'm asking of us. But you know what? Nothing worth having ever comes easily. You cannot have gain without pain. And so, if we are to turn this country around, we are going to have to admit that this problem is being fomented by those who claim to be the purveyors of news and information to us. And I'm going to go ahead and throw Fox News into that as well. We also see that Good Morning America was planning to frame the Dallas police incident as police violence, not the fact that it was these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist thugs and the Black Lives Matters organization that had fomented racism, divisiveness, hatred, and disunity. This is the sort of thing that the Fabian socialists love and adore. Think back to Cloward and Piven, those two academicians from Columbia that came up with this revolutionary and wicked idea of overwhelming the system to thereby have the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, come crawling to the government to provide a solution for a problem that government itself created. You know, that's something that Carly Fiorina had mentioned during the primary season, that socialism is based on the government providing solutions to problems that the government itself created in the first place. Now that we see that that is a quintessential pillar of the way that they act and the way that they attempt to force their vision down our throats, we can begin to come together, to coalesce in our capacity as popular sovereigns to rebut and rebuff it. You see, we possess far greater power and authority than we might realize. The Fabian socialists don't want you to realize that you are endowed by your Creator, the God of nature, with these fundamental and inalienable rights, which you can then, use and exercise in such a way as to defend your position. That's the truly amazing and empowering aspect of our representative Republican form of government. And one area where this can really come to play is with respect to the popular sovereignty. We see that there's this push with the upcoming GOP convention that's going to be held in Cleveland, Ohio in just a few days. It's fast approaching, that there's going to be an attempt by the delegates to overthrow the so-called presumptive nominee for the gutless opposition party, or GOP. These delegates should be allowed to vote their conscience, and their vote should be on a secret ballot. If that means that Donaldolph Julius Caesar Trumpolini falls to defeat, then so be it. That would be the proper course and outcome. Because if we recall, the United States of America is not a direct democracy. You see, the frothing at the mouth Black Lives Matters organization wants us to think that it is a democracy. That's why they can then say that insular and discrete minorities can be created. Instead of seeing that a representative republic like that of the United States would allow the rights of the sovereign individual to be protected. You see, that's why we say that the United States of America is a nation of laws and not of men. And to tie this in with the convention that is looming, it is to this. A tyranny of the majority is still a form of tyranny, and it goes against the very sort of system that our founding fathers devised with the inception of this country over 235 years ago. And in order to proactively maintain and safeguard our rights, we have to stand up for our Republican form of government. And therefore, what we see happening with the convention, these attempts to prevent the delegates from voting their conscience, these efforts that are being put forth by the mafioso Quafioso and his underlings, is all done to try and create a tyranny of the majority. And that's what Benjamin Franklin was trying to warn us about. And what it comes down to is that a democracy, as defined by Franklin, is two sheep or 2 wolves rather, and 1 sheep voting for what's for dinner. The wolves are going to win every time. They are going to devour that sheep, and they are going to force their way upon the minority. And even if Trump is trying to claim a majority, he never had a majority of the Republican vote. Never did. It was just the way that the rules were written out. Just like how the Black Lives Matters try and make it appear as though the majority of police are just out for black people. And that it's just bad for black people, that the cops just hate black people. And it's just not true. It's intellectually disingenuous, and it goes to what they are about. They're not about the truth. They're not about empowering the people. They are about pushing their narrative. Come hell or high water, they are about that narrative, and they will never back down from it. But it's not beneficial for us. It doesn't help us. It doesn't allow us to come together as popular sovereigns. It doesn't allow us to stand up for our rights, which are fundamental and inalienable. And when they use tragedy to try and go after our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, that's when we also see another slew of problems. The rash of problems that are facing us and the divisiveness that we are seeing here, it's all designed to attack our rights, much like Fast and Furious and Operation Gunrunner were and still are being used by this disastrous Barack Hussein Obama regime to attack our fundamental and inalienable God-given right to keep and bear firearms, as is guaranteed by the clear and concise language of the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. Why does it always come down to this? Why is it that they want to play these twisted, dark, and unwelcome games with us? It's because deep down they loathe and despise the ability of the American people to think and to act for themselves, and therefore it always plays out to their twisted goals. But it's deleterious. It's harmful. It does not stand up for the people. Now that may sound conflicting, because I know that I came out and said that the United States is not a direct democracy, and democracy has its roots in the words demos, meaning people, and recasi, meaning government. But let's stop and think about it. The other connotation of the Greek word for that, demos, meant mob, mobocracy, mob rule, meaning that a tyranny could easily come up due to knee-jerk reactions and for the upper echelons of a governmental system trying to create this sort of frenzy, hopping from one crisis to another. It's why Kat Sunstein said you never let a crisis go to waste. Well, that's why. It's because they want the American people to not be thinking, to shut down their mental faculties, and to just rawly emote. This is why blind rage and fury, which has been dominant throughout this 2016 presidential election cycle, is so dangerous. It makes you susceptible and vulnerable to the twisted machinations of a carnival barker like that of Donald J. Trump, also known as John Barron and also known as John Miller. And the reason that we harp on his alter egos is because they always said that they supported him because he calls it as it is. He's a straight shooter, much like the Black Lives Matters are straight shooters too, right? Well, the problem is, no, both of them are liars. And I say that because think back to the Michael Brown case. Hands up, don't shoot. The Freddie Gray case, that too. It's not about truth. They were the ones that were instigating the attack. They were the ones that were carrying out these lawless actions. Just as Donald Trump having alter egos to lie to the press is also not straight shooting. Both are a form of intellectual disingenuousness that has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. And unless and until we begin to grapple with that in any meaningful form or format, we are going to continue to encounter the grave and grievous problems that we are in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. Now, I'm not doing this to fearmonger, and I'm certainly not doing this to bloviate. Rather, I'm pointing out to the glaring, open, obvious, and apparent patterns that seem to be bubbling up to the surface every time that I analyze the current events that are facing this country. And there can be no doubt that these people are working in a well-organized, well-orchestrated plot to strip and deprive the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, particularly when it comes to our Second Amendment right. We see that the Black Lives Matters organization would love to have people stripped of their right to keep and bear firearms, particularly white people. And we see that Donald Trump is willing to whittle away and negotiate our non-negotiable rights. You see, the whole aspect behind a right being fundamental and inalienable means that it is, by its very nature, non-delegable and also non-negotiable. This is a dangerous position. It's a dangerous situation, and we should not allow it to come to fruition here in the United States. That is why we must be steadfast and stalwart in standing up for and protecting not only our fundamental and unalienable rights, but also those fundamental and inalienable rights of our fellow sovereign citizens. That is where true unity comes in the United States. That is why we have so oft times reiterated on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that the only thing that unifies us both as a nation and as a people is the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. It's why the United States of America, as a representative republic, is greater than the sum of its parts. Again, that old adage that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts comes to the forefront here, and it is completely on point with exactly what we are facing in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. And unless and until we are willing to address it in this fashion, to stand up for those rights in the manner that we are here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, then we are going to continue to see this deathward spiral that the United States currently faces not only continue unabated, but it is going to accelerate in pace. They are going to pick up the pace because they see a light at the end of the tunnel, and they think that that means that their goal that they have been working so meticulously towards for these past 150 years is within grasp. But we will stop them. We will stand up to them as we always do, because they are not looking out for us. And the reason they are not is because they hate us. They hate what we stand for. They hate what we represent. And they do not want us to think for ourselves. They never have. It's an arrogance to them. Just as it is an arrogance with respect to Donald Trump trying to deny the delegates to vote their conscience. It really shouldn't be a problem for him. If he is anywhere or as remotely popular as he claims to be, he should have no fear whatsoever of the people being allowed, or rather the delegates being allowed to vote their conscience. Because if he is that powerful, they will support him. If not, then that's what he's facing. That is the challenge to him that he's facing. And of course, this is not unprecedented. But again, just like the Black Lives Matters organization, and like every other twisted scenario that has been foisted upon the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, this is all based on a lie. It's not based on the truth. It's not based on what matters to you or me or to my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, or indeed to our first Air Marshal, Mr. Nelson Ward. No, this is about their own twisted machinations. This is about achieving their own goals at the expense of the true wielders of sovereignty, we the people. Again, it's why it's so important that we foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared Constitution, and thereby also our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. By being empowered, we can stand up and realize just who it is that is trying to threaten us and to strip away our rights, and we can move in an efficient, legal, and fair fashion to stop them. But it does require self-accountability. It does require that we not only hold these people accountable, but that we also are willing to hold ourselves accountable in entirety. I'm certainly willing to hold myself accountable for coming out here and conveying these messages to you. I am perfectly willing to hold myself accountable for every message that I say. And that's why I've always told you that I don't expect you to take the things that I say at face value. That I want you to go and look into these things yourself to see whether you agree with me or not, whether the great weight of the evidence supports the message that I'm conveying as I sit here, right now, and speak into this microphone to you. It is of that great weight and magnitude. And it is the life of this country that we are fighting for. It is for the continuing vitality and viability of the United States as a representative republic that we are fighting for. And that cannot be a light stance that we can take. And it cannot be something that's just ignored. But the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media want you to ignore it. They don't want you to think about just the great weight and magnitude of what is facing you, because then you will stand up to them. And think about it. They fear that. And they hate it. They hate you. They hate your ability to think. It always comes down to that. It has always been that about the way they do their twisted goals. And it comes down to power, corruption, and greed. That has always been what they do. And they do it to enrich themselves. And that's much like what Black Lives Matter is trying to do. They're trying to enrich themselves with special rights that no one else has. That's what Donald Trump is trying to do, to enrich himself at the expense of the Republican Party and at the expense of our sovereignty. And it's certainly what Hillary Rotten Clinton is trying to do. That is the common denominator that we see that unites all of them in their twisted ways, in what they are trying to foist upon us. That is what they believe. And they think that we're so stupid that we are going to be unable to see through the twisted plots and machinations that they are attempting to foist upon us against our will. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. We see right through it. That's why we want you, in your capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty and this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and community of popular sovereigns of ours, to be able to stand up for yourselves. We want you to have that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of the Constitution and your rights so that you can stop these people, these nefarious individuals who are hell-bent on not only destroying the United States, but also of stripping and depriving you of your God-given rights from being able to do so. And again, it is the duty of the people, if we recall what Thomas Jefferson said all those years ago, back at the inception of this country, it is the duty and the responsibility of the people to stand up for their rights. We cannot just give that responsibility away. We cannot ignore that we are burdened with that burden. But with great burdens comes great freedom. With great responsibility comes great liberty. That is something that is intrinsically part of the American character, heritage, spirit, and above all, national identity, something that defines us going all the way back to the beginning. So when these organizations like Black Lives Matter go out and say that the system's inherently racist, they need to go back and look up the term natural law. Because the system itself is not inherently racist. Are there racist people in this country? Absolutely. They could look in the mirror. They themselves are racist. these insular and discrete minorities that they attempt to carve out instead of there being one people in this country, the American people, that is a racist agenda that has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. Wasn't that the purpose of integration? But you see, they don't care about that. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about the history. They just want their twisted goals to go forward. It's just like Donald Trump doesn't care about the Constitution. He doesn't care about our national history. He just wants to further aggrandize power for himself at the expense of the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty, we the people. You see, this is the stark and harsh reality that we face, both as a people and as a nation. And when we see these deleterious factors coming together in unity like this, in a time frame like this, we have to be drawn back to history. And while I did not live through 1968, I'm far too young to have been alive at that time, I do realize the significance of the societal strife that was occurring throughout the United States, from coast to coast and border to border during that year. There were race riots, and on top of that, there were violent, brutal outbreaks at the Democrat National Convention. Yes, at that time it was partially based on Vietnam. But there was a deeper meaning to it. There was a sense that the government was not listening to the will of the people, that there was no longer consent of the governed, and that was a violation of one of those fundamental central tenets and pillars of the natural law that underpins our entire government. And it's about all that we hold near and dear. And that may sound so abstract that it's out of control, and that we just don't know who we are. But we do. They are the ones that are trying to strip us of that knowledge. They are the ones that are trying to harm us as a nation and as a people. And that is why we must be vigilant in standing up against them. And it's why we are about who we are and what we stand for and represent. And only we can do that. Only we are endowed with the power to save this country. That's why I say we have to stop looking for some messianic figure to come save us. That works against us. And it really works towards their goal, to split us as they have. And why that's so important is when you really come down and think about why our nation is in the state that it is. It's because of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists being able to incrementally foist their ideas upon us to try and pit American citizen against American citizen in this tactic of divide and conquer, that they want to be able to control the narrative. Well, we have to escape that. And of course, that duty, that onus, that responsibility falls squarely on our shoulders and our shoulders alone. And it must be that way. And we have to stand up for our rights. Trump doesn't want you to do that. Black Lives Matters don't want you to do that. The graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media don't want you to do that. They don't want you to come to this great realization that your rights matter, that all lives matter. You see, that's what Black Lives Matters is so intellectually disingenuous about. Look how exclusionary it is by its very name. And then they try and say that you're racist if you say all lives matter. You see, that's the intellectually disingenuous message, the propaganda that they wish to peddle. But it's there, clear as day, for everyone to see. We can all see right through it. We can all penetrate directly through it. We are not as stupid as they think we are. And that's why we have to come together, stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity, and reject these attempts to divide and conquer the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this country. We cannot escape our duty and our responsibilities. Nor should we even think that we have the ability to escape them. Because if we do that, then we are abandoning the foundational image that our founding fathers had for this nation going back to its inception 235 years ago. And because if we recall that our nation is based on the natural law tenets, then those laws are just as applicable today as they were 235 years ago, as God willing they will be 235 years from now. But that requires that we be proactive in maintaining and safeguarding our fundamental and inalienable rights. It means that we stand up for what we know to be the truth, for what we know to be right, and it goes to the importance of who we are as a nation and as a people. And that's why they want the disunity, because they realize that the American people, when drawn together, are an unstoppable force, that we have an indomitable will and an unconquerable spirit, but it can be conquered if it happens from within. That's why we say that the only way that liberty can fall in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours is for us to allow it to happen, for us to give up, for us to simply bow down and capitulate and allow their twisted machinations to become the rule of law. Well, we won't allow that to happen. That's why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, are dedicated to empowering you. That's what we have always been about. That's what we will always be about. We won't abandon you, as so many in the right or supposed right have. Now, with that said, it is time to send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. I guarantee you, folks, she will not ask you whether your decision to have alcohol was a bad one. She's just going to pour you the alcohol. Folks, as always, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Wright Flyer. I also invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you may have either here at our YouTube page or our Google Plus page or our Facebook page. And on top of that, I invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle at Radio Aviation EX. One more time, folks, that's at Radio Aviation EX. And there you will find our departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, our Blogspot account, which includes audio blogs, and then the Cafe Press account, which has all sorts of trinkets and goodies with our logo on it and first-class passengers logo on it, from drinking glasses to dog apparel to human apparel as well. iPhone, iPad, Android phone, Android pad covers, tote bags, you name it. It's there. You'll surely find something you like. Go ahead and give us a little bit of support so that we can continue to provide you with this indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment that we always do here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Thank you for flying with us again, folks. We'll see you next time. Do take care.